Ooh yay! We are back to some lesser developed characters once more. Today's focus is mainly on Trevor. After being rescued from scrap thanks to Edward, Trevor has been hard at work at the vicarage orchard ever since. Yet somehow he also still works at Croc's scrapyard, the exact place where he was going to get his butt canned to begin with. Kind of ironic. One day though, Trevor had exciting news to tell Edward.
The vicar says that not all children are able to have holidays by the sea, so he's having a garden party to raise money for a seaside trip. I'm going to be the star attraction, chatted Trevor, giving rides to all the visitors.
The star attraction, get it? Yeah, that was a stretch, I know. It is coincidental that the word traction is in the word itself, but that's nice to hear. Trevor was always an entertaining vehicle for the kids. Edward was also happy to hear the news. But he was distraught over the fact that he, being an engine, would not exactly be able to do anything at a garden party. Going back to Trevor for a minute though, did anyone notice his eyes are moving now? That's an upgrade from season 2.
Edward was worried. I wish there was something I could do for the party, he said. I'd like to be helpful like Trevor. Edward's driver laughed. You're helpful in your own way, and that's on the railway.
Edward's driver has a point there. Everyone has their use at some time, somewhere. Knowing how well Edward and Trevor work together, I'm sure something will come up where he'll be needed. The next day at Croc's scrapyard, Trevor traded faces with Edward and decided to look glum this time. Turns out he was getting scrapped for opening his mouth too soon about the garden party. Just kidding! If that was the reason, ooh, that escalated quickly.
The vicar's been so busy that he forgot to put up the posters. Now no one will know about the party. Don't worry, he said. Everything is going to be all right. The vicar can paste his posters on my cab and coaches, so wherever I go, they'll go too.
As if right on cue. What did I say a clip ago? Of course Edward is going to help out in this story. If he ended up not doing anything, then I don't see the reason in even putting his name in the title. Even Top Hat likened to the idea and had the plan put into action immediately. I don't know why Edward was worried to begin with. Whenever help is needed, Edward is always there to assist. It's like second nature. His tender says it for cripe's sake. Second, number 2. And boy, did his idea get people's attention.
Edward steamed happily through the stations collecting his passengers. Look, they said, the vicar is holding a party. We must go to that.
Meanwhile, Snoozadoodle Trevor was visited by Bertie, who he then informed of the attendees who were coming out to the garden party. Bertie then, of course, had to further emphasize that the visitors might prefer taking rides on him more than Trevor because he's old. Alright, Bertie, so you like being like that too, huh? You don't even hang around the big tender engines, and yet you're adopting a Gordonism. You just watch. That statement will come back to bite you.
The party day arrived. It had rained heavily during the night, and the orchard ground was soaked. Rain and mud won't spoil my day, said Trevor. No, indeed, agreed his driver. We'll stay on the road, then we won't get bogged down.
Not like it would truly be a big deal, though. You helped build Knapford Harbor back in Season 2, and that was originally on sand. Anyway, though, Trevor went to the garden party and began giving his attendees the rides that were advertised. Lo and behold, Bertie arrived as mentioned, and Trevor followed behind. But before anything else could be done, Bertie's Gordonism became a reality, as he became stuck in the mud at the gateway entrance.
His wheels had sunk deep in the orchard mud. Terence the tractor arrived just in time. I'm the one who has to plow fields, laughed Terence. We'd better get you out of here.
Well, what do you know? Even Terence got a chance to shine for a bit, and at last we get to see him in terrain other than dreaded snow. Thank God. Anyway, though, Trevor and Terence both hitched themselves to Bertie and effortlessly freed him from the sludge. And at that point, Bertie had no choice but to retract his statement from earlier in the day, which at least he was cordial about. This also means I hope Trevor has a couple more friends than just Edward now. And the party ended great too.
That evening, the vicar arrived to see Edward and his driver. Thanks to your good idea about the posters, hundreds of people paid to come to the party. We've raised lots of money for the children. Edward was very pleased, and Trevor fell happily asleep thinking of all the children who would now get to the seaside at last.
At least we didn't end with that Season 2 E.T. face mask twice in a row. But of course, we can't end an episode on Trevor without having him fall asleep in the vicarage orchard. This episode was alright. It's a good change in direction, but the narrative also doesn't stray away from similar stories told before when it comes to our green old-timer. Trevor can be an interesting character to develop, but all of his stories so far have had sort of the same formula from beginning to end. There needs to be a rail traction engine that he could meet or something. That would be an interaction I'd like to see. It was also good of the writers to have Terrence come in again. He hasn't been seen all that often either this season, except for Henry's Forest. Edward's appearance is also welcome, and although his helping hand isn't as extensive as it was the first time he helped Trevor, the garden party certainly would not have been as successful as it could have been without him. Lastly, Birdie, who's another underused character, gets the label this time as the antagonist. The thing is though, he's not a real one, obviously, but sometimes a character has to be given a role that puts the protagonists against something else. But for Birdie, his friction is very soft with Trevor. Our green traction engine barely even took to heart anything that Birdie said. Besides, unlike Diesel, who has refused thus far to change his views, Birdie saw the error in his ways. At least he knows when he's wrong. For music, the arrangements are abundant in motifs. The first we hear is Edward's classic theme while he thinks about how he could be of service to Trevor. The second is a small cameo of Top Hat, and lastly is Trevor's theme in full-on anthem sound. This particular rendition is much fuller in its composition, and that's probably because of it relating to the garden party. For the areas shown, some are new at least in display, but all have been shown before. Wellsworth Station and the Wellsworth Vicarage Orchard is shown again, both of which looked as though nothing has changed. The same could be said for Tidmouth Halt Station, which is seen when Edward rides around with all of his advertisements. Meanwhile, Croc's Scrapyard looks like it went through an overhaul. Either there's another set of rails that ran on the other side of the lot that we were never shown, or the set was changed because the first time we saw this place the rails were on the other side, but the smokestack remained where it was. Or one last idea is maybe the scrapyard continuously shifts its metal pilings around and that's why it looks different. Either way though, it's still a new view. No complaints on that. I also wanted to make note of the weather used in the episode. Sort of like Percy's Promise. Not many entries have been shown to have other types of terrain when it comes to different weather. And seeing Birdie get stuck in the mud and watching the other characters run around on soft earth made the situation feel more realistic. This was truly an episode involving all underrated characters. Next episode is Buzz Buzz. Thanks for watching.